All right, let's flesh this out. Joining us now, Victoria Coates, former Deputy National Security Advisor, and Roger Zakheim, Ronald Reagan Institute Director and co-founder of the Reagan National Defense Forum. Welcome to both of you. Victoria, I just had to get that riff off my chest because there's so much nonsense in the airwaves right now and barking up the wrong tree. We almost forgetting how much damage we have done to their military, to their economy. That country doesn't have one iota of the capabilities that it had a year ago or even a few months ago. That's how much damage we've inflicted. And I think there's a risk that we're somehow forgetting that, and I don't want to forget it, because they're nowhere right now. Iran is nowhere, even if we don't make all the necessary adjustments in the future. So that's my thought here.
No, I couldn't agree with you more, Larry, and it's always good to be with you and good to see you too, Roger. And I will say Barack Obama was right about one thing. This is a worse deal. It's worse for the Iranians than his sweetheart of a JCPOA deal for them. I was looking at the Iranian GDP and how quickly it shot up to close to $500 billion a year after the JCPOA was signed. We brought that back down to about 200 under the first Trump term. It went back up over 400 under Biden, and President Trump has been bringing that down. You're right. Even before Epic Fury, they were in a horrible, horrible economic meltdown, and this has made it exponentially worse. My feeling is they can't recover, regardless of if they're selling a couple of barrels of oil to the Chinese at a steep discount, or even on the open market with lower prices. That can't save them. So yeah, I will see what's in the deal. I'm not going to listen to the Twitter noise about it. I want to see what's actually on the paper, and then we'll see what the path is forward.
You know, Roger, I want to come back to this. Iran today is a tiny, shadowy sliver of what it was a month ago, 2 months ago, a year ago. I mean, the U.S. and Israel have taken it apart. And the Iranians may not, I mean, they're not going to admit that. I understand that. And these crazy radical Islamists who seem to be running the place, I don't know who's running it, but at least they're still in some kind of power. They don't want to tell you about that, but that's the reality. They are nowheres right now. They are not the power they were. They lack the capabilities they once had. Not by a little, Roger, by a lot. I mean, estimates run upwards of 80%. It could be even worse than that. We won't know. This is an important thought, because I see so much malarkey coming either from Iran or from Iran sympathizers or from the legacy media here. Let us not forget how we have, let's say, downsized Iran in all of its aspects.
Larry, your riff is spot on. I mean, we have cut them down to size. This was a regime, this sort of ring of fire against the United States and our allies in the Middle East. Now that ring of fire is around the neck of the regime. That is what we've seen. We've cut them down to size. They don't have the military. President Trump points that out, consistently taken out their Navy, their other forces. The issue, though, that's come out in this MOU discussion is whether or not the United States will do anything to rehabilitate this regime. And I agree with Victoria. We got to see this memorandum of understanding before we pass judgment. And I'm reassured what you showed at the outset, Larry, which is the President of the United States has made clear that this is the opposite of the JCPOA. And if the MOU that we see is the opposite of the JCPOA, that means we're not doing anything to rehabilitate the regime. It's actually presiding over the continued fall of this regime. I thought with Epic Fury, we saw the beginning of the end of this regime. And I think if we get the right MOU, we will see this regime accelerate its demise.
We have Vice President J.D. Vance on this nonsensical $300 billion, do we not? Let's run that tape. Here it comes. Take a listen.
So first of all, not a single cent of American money goes to Iran. Not $300 billion, not $24 billion, not any of the money, the dollar figures that I've seen floating around. Number two, this is a firm commitment backed up by verifiable action to never develop or buy a nuclear weapon by the Iranians, which, remember, that was the whole point of this entire operation, is to ensure not just that Iran wouldn't have a nuclear weapon for the next couple of years, but that they would make that long-term commitment.
All right, Victoria, so you heard J.D. Vance. I want to get your take on what he said. You have to parse through it word by word. We're not going to give $300 billion. I mean, are the Gulf states? Let me ask you an odd question: the Saudis and the UAE and the other Gulf states, you think they want to rehabilitate Iran after what Iran has done to them or tried to do to them? I don't think so. I mean, maybe I'm wrong. Maybe they'll give them a few nickels and dimes. Do you think they want to pour $300-400 billion in there or whatever? They're down about $1 trillion plus if you want to measure the loss of infrastructure and so forth and so on. Does anybody really think that the Sunni countries, the Gulf countries, want Iran to have a nuclear bomb, Victoria? I mean, where's the incentive here?
No, there's no incentive, Larry. Nobody in the region except for the Iranians thinks it's a good idea for them to have a bomb. So I think, this could be a very aspirational thing. These are not bad business people in Qatar, UAE, and Saudi Arabia. They don't make bad investments. And what you saw today at Evian in France with President Trump meeting with both Mohammed bin Zayed of UAE and Sheikh Tamim of Qatar, I mean, they're talking about trillions of dollars of investments into the United States. And, that is where the future lies. And so I don't see them, I mean, my understanding is if there is some kind of a fund, it's completely contingent on Iran completely changing their behavior and do a way that would, as Roger said, pretty much bake in their own demise if they start acting that way. So I think there's really very little danger of that money flowing into Tehran.
Yeah, they want to invest in the United States. The United States is the one with the first trillionaire. The United States has the lead in AI and every other industry there is. The United States has the lead in oil and energy and natural gas and LNG. Well, Iran's got nothing. They have nothing. Whatever they started with, they have nothing now. It'll take them decades to come through. All right, Roger, other thing. Israel. Does Israel get short shrift in this? What do we know? There's some unhappiness. I'm getting some text messages and some emails from Israeli activists. I'm a great supporter and friend of Israel's. What do you make of the Israeli position here?
Well, in the we've seen a lot of discussion that somehow Iran will have a veto over Israel's ability to respond to attacks from Hezbollah in Lebanon. And this crazy notion that somehow the United States is going to sign up to be the enforcer of an Iranian veto. That's nuts. We should never be in that position. And I'm very pleased that the administration has made clear that's not in the deal. And the most authoritative voice on this particular element of the deal comes from our ambassador to Israel, Ambassador Huckabee, who made clear today that in no form will the United States sign up for a deal where Israel will lose its ability to exercise its right to self-defense, and certainly the United States should not be enforcing some notional Iranian veto.
I'm glad to hear you say that, by the way. And I know Mike Huckabee said that, and I think it was very well timed, very important that he say that. Victoria, my take here is what you just said. I want to see what's in the MOU. Okay, I want to see it, and I want to go through it very, very carefully. But Victoria, I support the president because not what may be done in the future, even though I believe he'll keep to his red lines, but I support the future. I support him because he's taken us this far. The military attacks, the economic attack. He has gone, Victoria, as you well know, from the first term, he has gone where no other president has gone. Not Barack Obama, not even I'm in love with Ronald Reagan, my first boss, but no one has done what Trump has done. I'm not going to jump ship now, Victoria. I want to see the whole thing play itself out. And I do want to say, whatever happens, Iran's not going to have a nuke in at least 20 years, maybe longer than that, because of what we've done. And by the way, as I understand it, our military, right, the Fifth Fleet, CENTCOM, and so forth, they're not packing up and leaving exactly. So if Iran starts to, shall we say, misbehave, they will hear from us very rapidly. That's another reason I don't believe Donald Trump is going to let them get away with anything.
Oh, no, of course not, Larry. And I mean, I think to the Israel point, a very senior Israeli official has said to me repeatedly, the worst day with President Trump is so much better than the best day with either President Biden or President Obama. And so that remains absolutely 100% true. I'm going to Israel on Friday. for a conference that's been announced. So I'm looking forward to visiting with counterparts. I think that relationship will remain very strong because of what we just demonstrated. We can do jointly. Our two militaries together, so incredibly powerful. But to your last point, we have demonstrated, the president demonstrated last week that he will go back in and bomb them where he wants, when he wants. And they can do nothing about it. Their Chinese and Russian systems don't work. So he reserves that right. We can move them around the world, where we can move them from Venezuela to the Persian Gulf in a couple of days at this point. So they have no protection against it, and I'm quite sure we'll be watching them very, very closely.
Roger Zakheim, last one. I'm just going to say Iran will never be the same, and that is a boon to humankind. But the fact is, the damage that we have inflicted on him just there, stop the whole thing there. Forget about forget memorandums of understanding, forget about this, forget about. They're not going to be the force that they will be. Probably never again, Roger Zakheim. And I got to think that's a major accomplishment for Mr. Trump and Netanyahu and their allies right there. If the story ends there, it's still a tremendous thing.
Couldn't agree more. President Trump has done what no previous president since Ronald Reagan has been able to do. We have regime. They are weak, and we are in a position, along with our allies, to reconstruct the Middle East because of that, and we're all better off. We just got to keep up that momentum, keep up that pressure, and see the eventual fall of this dangerous and evil regime.
I have to believe we will. I mean, maybe I just have to believe he will keep up the pressure. Victoria Coates, thank you. Roger Zakheim, thank you. All right.